Welcome in to an Inside Carolina live postgame show. North Carolina beats Miami handily 92-73. Carolina with their fifth straight win on the season. I am Tommy Ashley. Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity are our sponsors. That is Rob Harrington. Rob, Carolina was expected to win. I think I saw the line was 16.5 or so. They ended up winning by 19. Pretty much cruise control the entire second half. Miami put up a little bit of a fight early in the game, making some shots, but your overall take, and we'll dig into it.
That's right. I mean, I thought the most tension in the second half was whether Carolina would cover the spread. I mean, really, this type of game is a function of the ACC being down and Miami specifically being so bad this season that you end up with games like this where I thought for a lot of the second half, the Tar Heels played down at a level of competition. And yet, they end up getting a pretty good-looking win based on the final score. I mean, certainly the offensive efficiency, which has been taken off here in the past month, continued to pace. Defensively, they got sloppy in the second half. Again, I mean, I thought the intensity ebbed, but it was probably difficult for everyone in the building, not just the players and coaches, to get up for an opponent like that. So all things considered, when you think about the stakes and take the caliber of opposition into account, I thought it was a good day.
Yeah, Carolina, 46 points in both halves for the Tar Heels, 42 for Miami in the second half, though. Carolina shoots 59% on the game, holds Miami to 43. Let's sort of take it piece by piece. I've kind of been on this guy's train for a while, and that's Jalen Withers. He hit some shots, hit a step-back three in the first half. Just, Rob, I mean, it's pretty clear that his entrance into the starting lineup has created some sort of comfort on offense for this team. But Withers himself personally has been making some shots. 4 for 6, 2 for 2 from 3, 10 rebounds, 11 points. I mean, it's player of the game if you ask me, but your thoughts on what you saw?
That's right. I mean, Withers, I think not only does he give them the size, which we've been harping on all season, but I actually like the way that he passes, especially in the first half. You saw some nice connections between Withers and Lubin. Withers looks for Lubin, and he has the size to get it to him. He presents a different passing angle from any of the guards just by virtue of being tall. And, of course, he's shooting tremendously. Now, I don't expect him to continue shooting threes the way that he has been recently. But even if he's in the mid-30s, that's good enough for people to play him. And he's been playing smarter. He's had a couple of mental mistakes, but so does everyone. I don't think that he has been more mistake prone than anyone else on the court since he's been placed back in the starting lineup. And so I don't think that we'll see any changes there. I'm hoping that finally Hubert has settled on this rotation. For better or worse, it's time to just roll out a lineup. They sort of seem to be settling on 8 or 9 guys, depending on how much Tyson plays from game to game. So it's really not a bad setup from a knock on wood, but from a health point of view, this late in the season, they seem to have figured out the starting lineup. They've gotten bigger. Now, how all of this will translate when they play a decent team, we just don't know, because Miami, the gap between Miami and Duke is so vast that it's hard to take away anything from this game and project it to a Duke game. But that's where it's headed, and they're going to have to find a way to win that game, I think, if they are going to be an at-large team in the tournament, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Withers' plays, 4 for 6, Lubin, 7 for 7, I think, in the second half, but 9 for 10 overall, 19. Somebody that has sort of vanished from the deal is Jalen Washington. I mean, there were several, I think, on his one miss, we were watching thinking that if that's Lubin or if that's Withers, that's a make and an and one. Washington missed it. So it's been an interesting deal with the bigs, but whatever's working. And I agree with you. Miami is not good. Miami is terrible on defense. Miami is worse on defense than they are overall, and they're now 6-23. So that says a lot. But like I'll say to anybody that's listening, Carolina has lost to these teams before or played very ugly basketball against bad teams before, and so they handled their business. Talking with Rob Harrington here on the Inside Carolina postgame. Of course, Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Go see them. Go get your swag. Go get your baseball gear. There's a baseball game going on right here in a few minutes. You can listen to it on the radio on WCHL, but you can get those baseball jerseys at Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Let's talk a little bit about Drake Powell, Rob. I mean, he's eased into the starting lineup. He continues to do everything. He's showing some leadership. He's showing all that toolbox that we've talked about. We said there would be one game we expected. I think Sherelle may have said it, that he would have like a 5-5-5-5 game. Well, he had 16 and 6 tonight. No assists, which was surprising, but Drake Powell's play is another one of those things that's really helped this team take off offensively.
I think so too, and I still think there's more for him to do. There was a play, I think it was in the second half, early in the second half, maybe, where they got the ball out in transition, and he catches it on the wing with one defender and no one behind him, and he sort of faked a three, took a dribble, and passed it back out. That's the one where I want him to. It's early offense. I want him to put his head down and go to the rim. I think he has the first step for it. He has the agility to finish, and then he's gotten a lot more confidence, I think, as a finisher over the course of the season. Of course, he's shooting it pretty well. I mean, I like to see him take threes. It's not the most beautiful. It's not a Cam Johnson release, not a Brady Manic release, but it's not bad. And certainly for a freshman, and him giving them that balance is taking a lot of the pressure off of RJ Davis as a scorer. Even on a day like this where his shot was off, you didn't notice it as much because they weren't relying on him quite as much. A lot of the offensive possessions didn't necessarily go through RJ Davis, which I think is great. They eventually, of course, they will need him to knock down more shots to beat the better opponents. But again, a game like this, it worked out fine. It enabled Powell to take more of a step forward and Lubin to get more touches, as you mentioned already. Withers is rounding into focus, as we've discussed. So I think that balance is coming not only from the size that we've talked about, but the skill sets that are now represented among the starters, I think, has helped everyone.
Yeah, Carolina wins by 19, and some folks in the chat are unhappy. It reminds me of Carolina beating a UCLA team some time ago, and Dewey and I had a rough post game. It was quite critical, and we especially Dewey, got skewered for not being happier that Carolina won the game. Folks can remember that stuff because it goes around and comes around. Carolina gets a 19-point win in an ACC game. You take those every day of the week. Rob, overall on this game, you mentioned the defense sort of slacked up in the second half, and it's tough when you're way ahead. But this ACC is bad, but this North Carolina team is playing for their life. Sherelle, again, reference him. He said every game's an NCAA tournament game. And while in the NCAA tournament, all you have to do is win. Now for North Carolina, you got to win, but you got to win big. Your take on the I don't want to say lackadaisical because I don't know if that's it, but there was some casualness going on there in the second half, allowed Matthew Cleveland to go off, allowed Johnson to go off for them, that this team needs to sort of button up before they play Virginia Tech.
I think that's right. I mean, I'm probably a little less critical of that type of thing when you obviously cannot lose the game. There was never a point, even when early on Miami was within 4 points or something, it just didn't seem like this is a team that can win. And you look at their record, there's a reason for that. But at the same time, you're right. I mean, Carolina can't afford to lose focus the way that they did. I don't attribute all of that to the team slacking so much. It's just the competition wasn't there. It looked like one of those December games during the holidays where the opponent's just sort of there to get a check. I'm not saying Miami was doing that, but they played like a team that knew they were going to lose, and they accepted losing. And Carolina did get rid of them by about 20 points. And though they didn't play very good defense in the second half, but that doesn't concern me. I think the more of the concern is that even while they're getting so much better on offense, defense in general, not just today, has been trending downward. So second half aside, I think just overall they're not playing their best defense right now, and they're going to need to do it on both sides to do the thing that you're talking about, which is to not only beat these bad teams, but to continue to pound them into the sand, and then to have a real puncher's chance against Duke, which is a task that they have not looked up to at any point this season, really. More, 1 week away from that, not much more practicing to do against these weaker opponents. I think Virginia Tech is way down too, even on the road. So I'm looking for another good win there, and then we'll see. I think they've positioned themselves about as well as they can over the past 3 weeks understanding that they dug themselves quite a hole prior to that point.
I'm gonna let you put your coach hat on, your scout cap, your analyst cap that you always have on. But how can Carolina get better on defense? Is it just a will and a want to, as Hubert Davis will say over and over? Is there something structurally, maybe, or particular player wise that they need to improve and can improve at this point? With 2 regular season games left.
To me, it looks like they're still not pressuring the ball as much as I'd like for them to. I think it's just philosophically, Hubert Davis teams don't force turnovers. But even so, I think they could pressure the ball handlers without allowing them to get so deep. Because what is happening sometimes is that the ball handler gets pretty close to the rim and there's a screen and the defense is already sort of compressed and beaten back. So I love to see those guards get out and pressure a little bit more closer to half court. Just, if nothing else, tend to burn some time. Force the offense to operate with less time on the shot clock. Because that some of these possessions are quick breakdowns. Sometimes they do okay, but then everything falls apart in the last 6 or 7 seconds. So I think I do think it is more of an execution thing than they are incapable of playing better defense than this. Because even as much as they've struggled this season, they have played better defense than they're playing right now. And I think maybe part of it is they're sort of flowing on offense and they're doing sort of this, okay, we'll outscore you thing. And you can get away with that against Miami, and NC State probably won't be able to get away with it against the Q1 teams they'll need to beat. I think they have to get at least one of those to make the tournament, and they have to tighten up defensively. I don't know that it's a tweaks thing at this point. The lineup is the lineup. So these guys just have to stay dialed in more. And then also I would love to see the guards pick up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, when you look at it, Carolina, Carolina play teams from old, they would just outscore you, and they could just, that 09 team, we've heard them talk about that a lot. They'd just say, okay, you want to run, let's go. Let's run. We'll beat you 100-85 or whatever. But to your point, it's a little bit tougher for this team, but I do think it's in them. But at this point in the season, you kind of are what you are as well. A lot of people in the chat talking about Elliot Cadeau, Rob. I feel like we have an Elliot Cadeau portion of the show. 4 assists, 3 turnovers today, no fouls. Carolina only 7 fouls called against them all year or all game. I guess Roger Ayers and his crew just didn't feel like blowing the whistle today because when the Florida State game, they blow it 150 times. But your thoughts on Cadeau's play and how he, again, at this point in the season, at this point in his career, what he can do to sort of figure it out a little bit more here towards the end.
The thing is, I thought he made some really nice plays off the dribble, both as a passer and as a scorer. I like for him looking to score, and I'm willing to accept, as the imaginary coach, I'm willing to accept him getting some of those shots stuffed at the rim because I just like for him to attack that way. Thought he saw some nice things offensively. As mentioned, Miami's not a very good defensive team. But I thought Cadeau did some good things. He still has the occasional just very careless turnover, like the one in the second half that I laughed when you could see Hubert Davis, the thought bubble of like, I want to scream at this guy. And he just sort of walked up and down the sideline when Cadeau just sort of whipped it out of bounds, not under any pressure at all. It's that turnover that he's got to get rid of because sometimes they tend to snowball on him, as we know. I do think that he's done a better job here in the last 6 weeks of keeping his head in the game after he makes a mistake, not getting too down on himself about it. But yes, I mean, that's just who he has been for 2 years. Probably won't change the rest of the season, but they're going to have to manage him if that starts to happen because, as we know, the first game at Duke, he got off to just a horrible start, and it wouldn't have made any difference. They weren't going to win that game regardless. But that led to this, this huge early turnovers and dunks for Duke, and it got them going, and it got away. And I think you'll see a tighter leash, especially now with Withers in the lineup. There aren't as many minutes available for the guards anyway. I think that's how you deal with it. If Cadeau does something you don't like, he comes out. But in order for this team to maximize its ceiling, especially as it has become an offensive team, I think he's got to be in there. And I think that he, again, even if he's not playing great, he makes Davis a better player because he makes Davis more situational rather than spamming high ball screens for RJ like they have done in the past. they don't have to do that anymore, and I think that's helped them.
Yeah, I mean, he finally got a punch too, and he's been trying to get that down the lane in traffic dunk for a while this year. I think for me watching him, it's a little maddening because he is so good. He has the ability to just be electric if he can just get that. It reminds me of a lot of players that are. You got to eventually cut out the mistakes and cut out the easy mistakes or the easy things you can clean up. And he's going to get there eventually. We'll see where it happens for Elliot Cadeau. Carolina wins by 19 over Miami. Second sponsor of the show. Email Matt at congruityhr.com for your small to mid-sized business assessments. Matt and Darren and that crowd can help you grow your small business into a national brand as they've done for themselves. Matt at congruityhr.com. And also, like I mentioned before, Johnny T-Shirt and johnnyt-shirt.com. Anything else, Rob, from today's game or looking forward? Carolina, they got to beat Virginia Tech. It doesn't matter what happens against Duke if they don't beat Virginia Tech. But anything overall going forward, because that game a week from now against Duke is going to be significant. I've seen a lot of NCAA tournament bracketologists or whatever you want to call it say they're going to be in by the skin of their teeth anyway. But for this regular season, your overall thoughts, and then I do want to ask you something about the ACC tournament.
Yeah, of course. I think what you're seeing over the past 10 days is even though Carolina is not only winning, they're covering the spread, not just from a gambling perspective, but from a metrics perspective, they're exceeding expectations. But they've stalled out in terms of all the bracket matrix, bracketology stuff because of the teams they're playing, and other teams they're in competition with for the bubble are still getting quality opportunities. And some of those teams are winning games. And so what it looks like is even if Carolina keeps doing its thing and in theory would rise, they're getting jumped because these teams just don't move the needle. And again, this is a function of a bad ACC. It'd be one thing if Miami were number 75 in the country or something, so a decent win. But when you look at their record, no one is going to be impressed by it, fairly or unfairly, because they're so weak this season. And Virginia Tech isn't going to help anything either. It's on the road at least. But it is all going to come down to this Duke game. If they somehow could win the next two, 14-6 to me, and they're in with it. I wouldn't even worry about the ACC tournament if they beat Duke and Virginia Tech. 14-6 with a win over Duke, I think would get it done regardless. If they can't beat Duke, then we'll segue into your question, the ACC tournament. But you go.
Yeah. So my thought here: a lot of people are saying Carolina can get the double bye and be 4 seed. And I said this on the radio with another outlet. They don't want to be the 4 seed because they rather be 5 or 6. And I would say 5th, and I'll tell you why. It gets you a game against a team you can beat, and then you get to play an SMU team likely, or a Wake team, or one of those two teams that you can beat, and you can get 2 wins in the ACC tournament. Because I don't think you're going to have much success against Duke, Louisville, or Clemson. Can you beat Louisville or Clemson? Sure. Can you beat SMU? You already did it. You blew them out. So I think Carolina not getting into the double bye, Rob, in some weird way, but it's because the ACC is so bad, helps Carolina at least stack a couple more wins. Your take on my take and how I'm terribly wrong or might be onto something for the first time.
No, I don't think you're terribly wrong. I'm skeptical that a 13-7 UNC could beat SMU in the tournament and make the NCAA tournament. I don't think that probably would be good enough. I think they probably need to win 2 of the Wake SMU type games, but Wake has fallen off so badly now. Probably, I think they need a big scalp, a bigger scalp than those 2. I think they will have to beat one of them. They can't get Duke, get Clemson, get Louisville, and then you draw some notice to the fact that now you can rise to the occasion and beat some of these teams. Obviously, Duke would be, in some respects, their best chance because it's on their home court. But Duke is just so much better than everyone else in the conference. But I think they need to win one of the 3. I think having to play Duke early in the ACC tournament is no good. At least they should have a crack at. If they can't beat Duke, at least get a crack. To your point, go on the path that sets you toward Louisville and Clemson and not the 4-1 game against Duke, because that probably isn't going to go anywhere good. If they can't beat them at home next weekend, I won't be optimistic that they would beat them in the ACC tournament on a neutral court. And no one wants to see them go 0-3 again. I mean, this has happened a couple of times in my life. Carolina's never gotten the opportunity to beat them 3 times when there was a mismatch in teams like this. Duke has been fortunate to do it, and this would be another one. I don't think anyone has the stomach for that. The last thing you want is to miss the tournament and lose 3 games to Duke. So I'm with you. Don't be a 4 seed. Don't get tracked with them.
Yeah, Carolina has some business to take care of before they get there. Got Virginia Tech and then Duke in the Smith Center, but they handled business today against a bad Miami team. Thank the ACC for the predicament the Tar Heels are in. They certainly, once upon a time, 14-6 in the ACC would have been very good. No longer. If you look at the SEC, that's a tough conference. That record means something in that conference for Carolina. It's going to come down to a game in 1 week. But that is Rob Harrington. I'm Tommy Ashley. Rob, I appreciate you. It's always fun to talk basketball with you because you're always so even keel. You're always so rational. And I think you calm the nerves of a lot of inside Carolina people. And you have a way of saying bad things really nicely. So it makes people enjoy them. If that makes sense. You know, this Carolina team's not very good, but the way you put it sounds great. The way I put it, people get mad at me. So, Rob, I thank you for that.
Well, let's make sure that we don't have a hot mic situation, because what I say right before the show and right after the show might be different. Thank you.
That is hilarious, and you are 100% accurate. That's Rob Harrington. I'm Tommy Ashley. You've been listening to the Inside Carolina postgame show. Carolina 92, Miami 73. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt. Shout out to Congruity, and shout out to always the Inside Carolina folks that are always in the chat. Much appreciated. You guys are great. Everybody enjoy your pretty Saturday. It's beautiful out. Get outside and enjoy it. Thanks, Rob.